we've done a lot of AI phone agents. One law firm had an issue with getting clients to medical exams, and they were losing money as a result to no-shows. So we actually built out kind of a full flow. Once the exam was scheduled, then we would send out reminders. If that client didn't respond to a reminder, we would actually have an AI agent call them and say, hey, are you going to be attending? And if they said no, then they would remind them, hey, there are legal and financial ramifications for you not attending.
So welcome to the Las Vegas IT podcast. My name is Shatoya, and today I do have the pleasure of speaking to San. Super excited to get to know him a little bit better. He is the founder of Drive-Face Consulting. How are you doing today, San?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit better. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to be the founder of Drive-Face Consulting?
Yeah. So yes, as you said, I'm the founder of Drive-Face Consulting. I started this in about 2022, I believe, something like that. So Drive-Face Consulting is a no-code app development firm. So we build custom apps using no-code. Kind of what I always tell people is, through no-code, we've saved our clients over $1 million in app development costs. And so, how I got into it, I always like to share this story is during the pandemic, my daughter, her, only child kept, her highlight was the ice cream truck, and she kept missing the ice cream truck. And she finally said, hey, Dad, can we build an app to track the ice cream truck? And as a girl dad, I was like, I said, yes, we got to make it happen. And then I looked into how much it would cost, and I was like, oh, we can't make that happen. So I ended up learning how to build in a platform called Bubble, which is a no-code platform. And we built the app. We actually ended up getting the app license from a food truck association in Wisconsin. And it opened my eyes as someone who never programmed before. I tell people it was like getting a superpower all of a sudden where, before, you couldn't build anything, and all of a sudden you could build whatever you want. And it really kind of opened my eyes, and it kind of led to me building for my own businesses and then eventually building for other businesses, their products. So.
Got it. So it all started from help assisting your daughter build an app.
That's how it started, actually. 100% true story.
No, and that's a very interesting story to hear. I guess, what was your biggest struggle doing that?
So, again, I come from someone that doesn't have any coding background. I will say one thing that did help me quite a bit was in a past life for one of my businesses, I did learn how to use Microsoft Access, which if you look at the no-code platforms, there's a lot of similarities between Microsoft Access and the no-code platform. So that gave me a basic understanding. But if I didn't have that, it's just a completely different world, going from, never coding to, even though it's no code, you still have to understand the logic and things like that of, programs. So I think that's kind of always been the biggest struggle, is just kind of learning that type of logic, that type of thinking.
Got it. And when you mention Microsoft Access, people may not understand exactly what that is. Can you just share with us what that is?
Yeah. So I think it still exists. So Microsoft Access is, part of the Office suite. And so it is a tool. It's a database tool. So you could build your own database using Microsoft Access. And it was in a lot of ways kind of a no code app development tool. They probably didn't call it that at the time because it no code wasn't a thing back then. But, for one of my businesses, we did event planning in the healthcare industry for pharmaceutical companies. We did, at one point we did close to 1,000 meetings a year. And so I had to build a database to track all those events, manage all the logistics of it. So, and it was just a lot more efficient than doing it in Excel and other tools. So I built kind of a full, platform where we could enter all the information, share information with the pharmaceutical reps we worked with. So, but yeah, I mean, that's so if you're, I don't see Access being quite as prevalent as it was back in, we're looking at early 2000s. Yeah, pretty much early 2000s and mid 2000s that we really used that.
Understood. So it was a little while ago. You said early 2000s, which is crazy to think that it's already 2025. And it sounds like you've done a lot of different things, but how did you get into helping small businesses?
Well, I mean, it's the natural place to start, right? When I started the businesses, one of the first kind of marketing tool, activities I did was join BNI, if you're familiar with that. And so, for those that aren't, it's Business Networking International, I believe is what it stands for. And so, I had a group of 50 plus businesses that are all local, and so it really got my start. We've kind of since kind of moved towards bigger businesses, but it's just smaller businesses are easier to access. The sales cycle isn't going to be as long as these bigger businesses. So it was just kind of a natural place to get started. But one challenge that we really started to encounter with the small business market is a lot of the small business owners don't necessarily understand the technology. And more importantly, from our standpoint as a business owner, they didn't understand the value of the technology. Right. And so, we really found it challenging to do this profitably with small businesses because they didn't have the budget. They didn't understand the value of the budget. So we were getting nickel and dimed on these smaller projects that we were undercharging for. And so it just, that's why we started to go after some of these larger projects.
Got it. No, and I totally get it. Like the feeling that when you undercharge. And so one of the things that you did mention was no code tools.
hmm
Could you just share with us exactly what does that mean?
Sure. No, I get that question quite a bit. So no code tools, platforms. So some of the main ones that we're using right now are bubble.io, Zano.com, WeWeb.io, Flutterflow. So these are tools that allow us to build fully functional applications without writing a line of code. Now, in some cases, we can add a layer of code on top when we need to, but generally speaking, we can build a very complex application without writing a line of code. So no code is really, it's programming, but it's visual programming. So when I talk to people, when you talk about a business application, the core, every business application is going to look different, but at its core, a lot of it is creating data, updating data, manipulating data, displaying data,
Mhm.
right? And so there are kind of building block functions that go into a lot of applications that are similar. So with these no code tools, a lot of those functions are built into the tool, and it's kind of drag and drop, kind of sequencing those building blocks together in a way to build the application that you want. And then you can add conditions as, do this, if then type stuff. You can build that conditional stuff and additional functionality into the app. And so you kind of, by using these pre-built modules, so to speak, it really speeds up the time of development quite a bit. So, for instance, we actually had one recently that we just finished up. Now, this is probably the largest one we did. When they came to us, they had an estimate on a project they wanted to do of over $500,000. We ended up doing it for right on 40,000. So,
Mm.
I mean, we saved them close to $500,000 on that project. So now again, not all our projects are that big, just to be clear, but that gives you a sense of the scope. And we have a couple right now where their estimates are in 4 to 900K, and we'll probably be in the 25 to 50K for those. And again, these are large projects. On the lower end will be, 5K to 25, 15K, kind of on the lower end of what we do as well. But it's a pretty significant difference. But again, at the end of the day, no code is visual programming. The biggest takeaway though is you're able to build applications significantly faster, and as a result, save a lot of cost as well, as because of that time savings.
Got it. And that's a lot of savings.
Yeah,
And so I just want to make sure I fully understand. And if I have questions, I'm sure our audience will as well. So you're saying because the no code tools, that's the reason why instead of, someone paying $500,000, they're only paying like $40,000. Is that what I'm hearing?
correct. That's
Okay,
correct. Yeah, yeah,
awesome. And I was like, oh, that's crazy.
yeah.
And I feel like at the same time, as long as the tools that you're currently putting into place, as long as they work, that's really all the businesses really care about.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you kind of two other benefits of it, right? So number
Mhm.
one is the speed of the initial build is definitely a benefit for sure, but what we found over and over again is once you build that initial product, 99.9% of the time, what you build initially, there's people just use it in different ways. There's just different things that you don't expect once you build it. So really the work happens once you put that product out in the market. Once you get feedback, you then go take that feedback, incorporate it into that product and iterate on it. Again, that's where no code really, really starts to shine, is because you can incorporate that feedback so quickly. The second thing that I'll mention is that in the past, when coding used to be such a specific skill that not a lot of people had, right? And so what you saw was the people that were coders, or what I call builders, a lot of times didn't understand the audience they were building for, didn't understand the product they were building for, didn't understand the use cases that they were building for. Now, with no code, you can allow people that don't have that coding background, that aren't as technical, to be able to build those products. And so now you have people that are users and product people also become builders. And so I think what you're going to see is better products as a result, because they understand, what they're building. A lot of times with our clients, what they'll tell us is what they appreciate most about it. Because I come from a non-technical background, what they appreciate is you understand what you're building more than other teams that we've talked to, right? And so I think, because I come from a business background first, so I understand the business side, and I'm able to kind of inject that insight while I also understand what it takes to build it. So I really think kind of decreasing, kind of closing the divide between building and using the product, I think, is another benefit of no code.
Understood. I had a lot of things come to mind when you were talking. And so I guess one of my questions that I did think about is, when it comes to your clients, for one, what type of customer are you currently looking for? And then another, is there a particular application that you guys build?
So what kind of client? I think we're still learning. I think we kind of started broad with the intent of trying to find a niche, right?
Hmm.
There was always a saying, find your niche to get rich, right? And I do believe in that generally. But when you start, you don't, if you pick a niche, it's somewhat arbitrary, right? So you need to figure out, okay, where are we good? Where is the market? Where's the appetite for it? So we are starting to get more activity in the healthcare market. And so that's, one area. The big one that we did was in the kind of the financial services field. So a lot of our activity right now is in the healthcare marketing. We do have some educational industry items, but so those are kind of some of the types of verticals that we're going after. Like, we did a lot in the home services market to start with, but again, those were kind of local small businesses that I think we're maybe trying to get away from a little bit now. We also have a lot of startups that are trying to kind of build their initial product. And in a lot of cases with no code, they can get that initial product out there without having to raise a lot, if possibly no money at all. And so that's been kind of that, very helpful as well. So we're hoping to get with a lot of startups early on, grow with them as they grow. We can kind of grow with them as well. There might have been a second part of that question. I don't know if I missed.
I had asked, was there a certain application that you guys currently do?
That's right. So not really. I'll be honest. In some sense, we almost like kind of doing everything custom. I think part of the thing that we enjoy, I tell people, we're not really a technology company. We're a problem solving company. So just so happens that technology is the tool that we use to build, to solve problems. So really, I always like to understand what the problem is and then design the solution around that. So there might be some efficiencies in kind of building the same thing over and over again, but we may eventually get to that as we get kind of more projects under our belt and we see kind of some opportunities. But to date, I mean, we've built web-based internal tools. We've got consumer mobile apps on the Android and iPhone stores. So it's really been kind of a pretty broad range of applications that we've built.
Okay, no, it's good to know, because I feel like I run across a lot of different people, so it's good to know kind of the applications that you can help businesses or small businesses, which I think is super, super important. And then, one of the big topics lately that we've been talking about on this podcast is AI. It's been a huge topic. How can a small business, use AI to make these things go faster?
That's such a loaded question. I mean, it's virtually limitless. I'll do my best to give you some high level examples of things that we work on, because as you can imagine, a lot more of the applications we work on are the clients want to incorporate AI in them, right? So some of the things we've done recently are we've done a lot of AI phone agents, which has been cool. So actually, for a law firm, one law firm had an issue with getting clients to medical exams, and they were losing money as a result to no shows. So we actually built out kind of a full flow that once the exam was scheduled, then we would send out reminders. If that client didn't respond to a reminder, we would actually have an AI agent call them and say, hey, are you going to be attending? And if they said no, then they would remind them, hey, there are legal and financial ramifications for you not attending. And if they still weren't going to go, then we could have them transferred to the actual office to handle it. And so we've had a couple of virtual receptionists, so that's kind of one that we've done, and chatbots are kind of in that same bucket. But we've also incorporated AI within applications. So I built a tool recently. I was trying to learn a new no-code platform, and so whenever I spend time on doing that, I always want to build something that could be useful for myself. And so I built a tool. It's called signalboard.io, where we use it for lead generation, where we basically monitor keywords mentions on LinkedIn, Reddit, and Twitter. And so I put in the keywords I want. Every day it brings in all the mentions on those social media channels into the platform. And so I use AI in two ways. So number one is, when I set up the keyword, I put in, this is the type of person I'm looking for. I want someone that wants to spend money on this, right? And so the first thing it does, it evaluates that and it puts it into low intent, high intent. So then when I go into the signal board, it kind of pulls out the ones that are potentially high intent. It's not perfect, and I probably need to tweak that prompt, but it does its job. Then the second piece is I give it information of, okay, well, for these people, here's the service I want to offer. Here's the call to action that I want. So what happens is it'll actually draft a response for me to that mention. And so what's nice is I monitor about 15 keywords. So it takes me about a half hour to go through all the mentions, every day. And so that's been kind of another way. We've also been doing ones where using AI to help with the estimation process for contractors. We're using, with construction plans, to make this help, decisions in the healthcare industry, where they're evaluating, okay, here, people that are applying for certain things, they can, if we give them here the guidelines, we can have them, help make decisions. There's a couple other applications. I can't be too specific with them, but there's other applications in the healthcare market that we're looking at as well to utilize AI. So, what's different about AI is it, in the past with automation, it was either kind of a yes, no, you needed a very specific answer to be able to use, an application to help you with decisions. With AI, you add almost a subjective element to it, where it can help with evaluation and decision making. And that's what I think makes it so unique about the technologies. We've never had that technology, and it's become so accessible now that it really can. Again, it's almost limitless what a small business could do with AI. 100%.
Got it. No, and it's very exciting. The direction that we're going with AI. No, and I look forward to hearing more about your estimating software, because I'm sure our estimators would love to hear about that. And then, so when it comes to, let's just say someone is interested in building an app or, some type of tech product, where should they start?
So what we've seen over and over again is a bunch of people that say they want to build a product, and they come to us and they really don't have a clear vision of what they want to build. And so where it always starts, I'll kind of give you a couple different perspectives on this. So number one is for startups, a lot of times what we see is they have a great idea on a product, but I always tell them that, because I also mentor an accelerator program as well, is I tell people if you're trying to monetize a product, your number one job is to make sure you're working on a problem that's painful enough that someone will pay for a solution. Because 9 times out of 10, I see it all the time, and I've done it myself, where you built a product, it just doesn't solve a pain point, and people aren't willing to pay for it. So that's number one, is to validate that as quickly as possible. Sometimes you can do that without even building a product. But let's kind of skip ahead, because I think kind of this is more of what you're asking, I believe, is once you decide you want to build a product, you really want to think through and map out who are the types of users that are going to use it. What do I want that user to go? What do I want the user to do step by step? Exactly what do I want them to do? And so a lot of people just haven't thought that out. And then, if you have thought that out, what we found is the most effective next step is to go through what we call a wireframing process, where we map out that, what we call that user journey, user experience. And then we actually design out every major screen in the app. That process, what we've seen over and over again, is it forces the users to make decisions and think through, okay, what is it that we're really trying to make? What do I want that user to do? Because when they actually see it, because a lot of times people think they know what they want, and then they see it, and it just goes a different direction. So that wireframing process has been a really key part, and I would tell people whenever possible, don't skip over that, because it can really help you really increase your chances of success of building a successful product.
Got it. And so you did share with us a little bit about the process. I mean, is there anything else that someone should know? Like, how long does it take to build an app or anything like that? That's very important.
Kind of on the low end. I mean, that signal board product I literally built in 3 weeks. And that was only because I was only using that platform for the first time. So the reality is I probably could have built that a little bit faster if if that hadn't been the first time I've used that no code platform. That big project that we worked on that I told you for 40K, that ended up taking about 5 months. The reality is my recommendation would be, generally speaking, if you're building a brand new product, there's going to be exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, if it takes more than 4 weeks in no code, you've probably tried to do too much with it. What we've seen is if you try and do too much with your initial product, the reality is if you build a new product, a new tech product, you're going to have bugs in it. There's going to be some things that you just don't expect. And if you try and have too many features in that first launch product, you're just trying to fight too many battles on too many fronts, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you can prioritize, okay, here's the number one thing I want this to do. We focus on that, nail that, and then incrementally adding features after that becomes a whole lot easier versus trying to dump a whole bunch of features into that initial product. That would be another big recommendation, I would say. So if you do see it taking more than a month, then the reality is you might have tried to do too much with it. And a lot of times I do try and pare people down. There's some products, just because of the nature, maybe that's not possible, but for the most part, I would say most people should be aiming to do, have something that they can launch within 4 weeks. Because they say the sooner you can get to learning, the better, right?
Got it. No, and that's great to know for someone who has a timeline, kind of like, okay, this is how long it's going to take. But I do also like what you said, like, you want to start small and then grow from there. That's kind of what I got from that, which, I mean, the same thing with anything that you do in life.
Yeah.
If you try to handle too much, like a lot of times it just either doesn't get done or you've wasted time on certain things that shouldn't be done, that didn't need to be done. And then when it comes to, like, what are some of the mistakes that you see from small business owners that when it comes to tech, and creating an app that you've seen, and then how do they avoid those mistakes?
I'll be honest. So I probably mentioned a few of them, but I mean, I think the mistake most small business owners make is not doing anything, honestly. If I'm being honest with you, I feel like what I'm so excited about is the two technologies we work with the most are AI and no code. AI and no code have allowed for kind of enterprise level technology it's really democratizing it, where it's making it accessible to these smaller organizations. Now, it might be a little bit more of an investment than they're comfortable with up front, but the reality is, like, if you're not doing it, number one, I know your competitors are, right? And the more you can get repetitive, lower level tasks out of the hands of you and your team, the more that you can focus on higher level tasks, which then kind of increases the potential and the capacity of your business, right? And so I would say a lot of the biggest mistakes I see is that these small businesses are just scared of the technology and just don't do anything, in my opinion. But if they do move forward, it's some of the things that we talked about. They try and do too much with it. They don't really think through what it is that they're building. I mean, those are really kind of the big ones that we see.
Got it. So from what I got from there, just start. And then, as you said, start simple and then grow beyond that after you
I
actually
would say
launch
100%.
it.
Yep.
Awesome. And then, is there anything else that you'd possibly like to share that we possibly did not talk about?
No, I mean, I would say I do. Yeah, I like to get on these podcasts because a lot of the people that we're talking to, and it's funny because I come from this world, and so it's always a shock when I talk to someone. They don't like, oh, I don't know what no code is. And from my world, I'm like, it's my life. So it's like, how could you not know? But it really is, the people that don't know are the ones that can benefit the most. And so I think it's just part of what I'm trying to do is just educate, a lot of small businesses to just realize that there's just so much more that is accessible now, and AI is only accelerating that process, right? And I will say again that, like, I still talk to people that won't send text messages. Like, technology will pass you by, and at some point, if you get too far behind, it's going to be tough to catch up. And so I would say really just educate yourselves. And, I'm happy to be a resource. And, that's why I try and share a lot of my knowledge on these podcasts, because I just see so many business owners that just don't know that, I think that there's always this perception that building, a mobile app is going to be $1 million. And that's just not true anymore.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's so good to know. And then also for those businesses that are, trained not to stay behind, is there any resources that you have that, you could possibly share with people so they can stay up with technology?
Yeah, I mean, a good one is, so if you go on our website, so our website is www.drivephase.co. So it's DRIVEPHASE.co, not .com. It's on the main link. I believe it's a no code ebook that we pulled together that you can download for free right on there. So it talks about the benefits, the downsides, and some of the major no code platforms. But the beauty is, you can go on YouTube now. You can go on Udemy now. You can go on a lot of these resources that won't cost you a lot. But I tell people, kind of going back to one of my earlier things, is I just learned by building that food truck app, right? And I built something that I cared about. So I took it more seriously, and it made the learning more efficient. And so I tell people, just go build something. If your first one's a piece of crap, that's fine. Like it, but just like I told you earlier, just go start and do something. If it is something, if you don't want to do it, then, that you don't have
Right.
to. I'm not forcing anyone, but if it is something that you're interested in, just go build something. Like it, I play basketball once a week with a couple guys from my neighborhood. It's old man basketball. And so I built a texting registration system so we know how many people are coming. It's just, I just build stupid things like that probably have, relatively small value, but it's just, fun to keep the skills up, but it's just practice. And so go find things like that to build, and it can turn into something more meaningful for your business.
Awesome. And you did mention your website, which we'll be sure to put that in the description. If someone is looking to reach out to you or get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Really is on the website. I've got probably close to 1 million call to actions on there to schedule a free consultation. So that's really, and like I said, I mean, that is a free consultation. I'm not a hard sales type of person. I like to just hear what are your problems, and I can give you, okay, well, here are some things you can think about. And then from there, if they're interested in working on this, then absolutely happy to work with them. But that free consultation truly is a free consultation. Yeah. we'll let you know what we think, what your options are, what's possible. And then, but yeah, that free consultation is probably the best resource I can offer.
Awesome. That's great to know. Well, Sam, thank you so much. Today was, it was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more. And I did enjoy our conversation. But so thank you so much and you have a great day.